Hey, Dr. Ronnie, welcome to Docs Outside the Box. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. It looks like you've been making the rounds on different podcasts. So I wanted to have you here to discuss, everything that you've been talking about with real estate, being an ER physician, and your transition from one to the other. This is a story that I think a lot of residents need to hear about. I think actually this is a story that everybody who's in professional school or any type of profession need to know about, which is where you start ain't necessarily how you going to be, or it's not necessarily going to be the place where you end. And sometimes we need to transition and pivot. So I'm gonna stop talking, tell the audience who you are, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it's exactly what you said. I always wanted to be a doctor. I was a
At what
practice.
age? What age did you want to be a doctor?
I want to say like 8 or 9.
Okay, so pretty early on, yeah.
I just was like, I wanted to be a doctor. My dad's a physician. He tried to dissuade me. He's like, don't be a doctor. There's so many other things. And I was like stubborn. I was like, no, I am going to be a doctor. I didn't care what he said. So I just was like very focused. And
Did he say, did you remember any of the specific reasons why he said don't like come into medicine at all?
oh, he was basically like, as a woman, you're never going to get married. You're never going to have a life. You
Damn,
won't
that's
have
harsh.
children.
Damn, that's
You're going
harsh.
to, yeah.
Keep going. I'm listening. I'm just saying, damn, that's harsh after each time.
And, it's not what it's supposed to be, insurance companies. And I was like, I don't care. It's women do it. And I want to help. And I want to I was just so stubborn
Hmm.
that I didn't, and it's, in retrospect, I wish I wasn't that stubborn. Because I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I think that the only reason I became a doctor and went through that entire journey was how stubborn I was.
Mm.
Giving up my social life, giving up my weekends, giving up college, partying, all of it was to become a doctor. So I had to be that stubborn and that driven.
So why'd you decide ER? Why was ER your jam?
You know, ER was very much of a process of elimination. I knew I liked procedures. I wanted a good schedule. I wanted to prove my dad wrong. I'm going to have a life. I'm going to have a family.
Okay.
And it really did provide the most freedom and flexibility. You can be off on a Monday, but on top of it, I loved the critical thinking. I loved critical care procedures. I loved the mix of the patients, and really being there, as a safety net for all of the patients in their worst day, on their worst day. So I love that part of it.
I think out of all the specialties, I would say that medicine, or excuse me, in ER medicine, I don't know why I'm saying ER medicine, but emergency medicine is as close to as stressful a position or specialty you can take, but also at the same time, it has like lifestyle in mind also, right? And I think
Right.
so many different other specialties, trauma surgery included, we've kind of looked at what y'all have done and said, hey, we want to fashion our lives like that. And I think definitely a lot of people are like, well, how's surgery able to kind of take this shift work type mentality? And we've done it really well, I think now. But I definitely think for the people listening, like ER medicine is one of the ones that lends itself more to work life balance. But it's extremely like the peaks and the valleys are really steep for y'all.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll remember a day when I was in the ER. I was taking care of 2 stroke patients at the same time. I had a STEMI, a respiratory distress, 3 ambulances checking in, 10 people in the waiting room, and I heard a code blue overhead, and we were responsible for those code blues.
Was this at a real small
And
hospital?
really small hospital, single coverage, no scribe, no mid-level, just me. All of this together. And I was just like, I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
It was so stressful.
Yeah,
And,
I think a
you
lot of people
know,
don't. I think a lot of people don't realize like once you get out of a city area and you start going into suburban and rural areas, like the limited resources, including physicians and other practitioners out there, and people don't realize like how one practitioner is handling multiple situations like what you're handling, right? Like they think that there's help, and it's like there's no help,
there's no
and
help. It's just you. And
you have to ration your care.
yes. And, at some point I was like, I can't do this anymore.
So
Like,
what,
this
what,
is,
so what, how many years like did you get to a point where you're like, okay, like I'm an ER doc, I'm happy, I love it. Like what year were you starting to consider? You don't have to give me the year, but like around what time, how many years in are you like, yeah, this is really stressful. I'm not sure if I can do this for like
so year
until I'm
two
60.
after residency as an attending,
Damn, you knew already.
I had two pediatric deaths in one day.
Oh,
And I had a 2-year-old that choked on something. We couldn't bring her back. And then I had a 14-year-old that hung himself. And I came out of that shift just sobbing, saying, I don't know how do you do this for 30 years? How do you see that trauma? How do you take people's pain for so long? I didn't know how I could do it. And I did it for another 13 years.
mm.
So it started early. You know, it was very much like I did all this. This is what I signed up for. You know, it was a lot of pride.
Then a small image of your dad as the
Yeah.
angel is like on your shoulder, like I done told you, I done told you,
Yes.
I told you. Okay.
Yep. And I tried to I tried different settings. So that was in an academic setting where I was in charge of residents, and then I said, "Oh, it's having residents. I don't want residents, so I'll be a community doctor." So then I went to a hot community doctor in a busy, um, you know.
And how much are you getting paid at this time?
So when I was in academia, I was getting 185,000. But
Mm.
I had 12 weeks vacation.
Okay. But then when you went to like these smaller hospitals, what was the peak? What was how much you were making?
At my peak, it was around 350,000.
And still unhappy.
Very.
So the reason I mentioned that is it sounds like no matter how much you were changing your environment, whether it's working with residents, not working with residents, large academic hospital or smaller academic hospital, or larger amount of money, like you're kind of finding yourself kind of searching for something that you can't really see within the field of medicine, at least if I'm
Right.
summarizing this
Right.
correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I tried high volume, low volume. I tried community hospital, academia. I tried private freestanding ERs. I tried it all just to stay, to do what I loved, because in the end, I still love taking care of patients. But the amount, it didn't matter what setting I was in. I always felt like I didn't have enough resources. I felt like the administrators were telling me how to do my job, what was required. I felt like there was so much liability. And I felt like I could only split myself so many ways to take care of the patients. It just, the whole setting of where medicine is going got me very frustrated.
So if we
And I
fast forward,
wanted to,
if we fast forward
yeah.
to where you are right now, right? Like let's just take a top down and then work our way backwards. So right now, like I see where you were like several, almost a decade ago to where you are right now. Like right now, you're not practicing as an ER physician currently, right?
Correct.
And how many properties do you have right now?
I have a lot of properties.
Hmm.
I have right now as a general partner, as a owner, I have over 4,000 apartment units. I own retail centers, mobile home parks, an assisted living facility. I'm a owner in 2 freestanding ERs as well. And I have 1,300 doors as a general partner in apartments as well.
And just so people who don't understand, when you say doors, you mean like these are like individual, like either an apartment or a home or something like that, correct?
Correct. Every home or door or apartment is considered a door. So
Okay.
if you're buying an apartment complex that has 200 doors, 200 apartments in it, you say, I have 200 units, 200 doors. That's kind of the
Okay.
same.
Now, folks, the reason why I transitioned from where she was to where she's at right now is just to kind of just show like probably maybe at the, I'd say the nadir maybe of your career to kind of where you are right now is like almost 180-degree difference change. Let's work our way backwards now. Okay, so now you have a ton of properties. You are financially independent. I'm going to assume you kind of just running the show in a different sense. Let's go back to where you were, like when you're starting to realize, okay, the stress, taking care of these patients, that's kind of not where you're at. Like, when did you start realizing, I need to consider something else, maybe something outside of medicine? What was the next steps after that? Was that real estate, or was it, because I see you also have some certifications, some other certifications and maybe some other degrees. Like, how did that process start? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, every single shift where I felt completely exhausted and drained made me say, what else is there out there? What else can I do? And for many years, I said nothing. I'm just a doctor. What do I know?
Yeah, I
I
heard that
don't have
before.
I don't have an MBA. What do I know? I don't have an MPH. I didn't do research. I can't do anything. I don't want to work for an insurance company. There was like, just suck it up. I don't want to go do another residency. And I wouldn't even know what I wanted to change my specialty to. So it was, I started exploring, like, should I open a car wash?
Oh, you were
I
real
started,
broad.
oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Do I
Okay.
want a
So,
restaurant? I
so you
wanted
ain't know what
to,
you wanted to do. Got you. Okay.
no, no. I started, like looking into how do you buy, yogurt places, franchises, uh, schools. I was looking into how to buy restaurants, how to buy a car wash. I almost pulled the trigger on buying a car wash until I realized that, it's very expensive and risky when you don't know what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I just kept going back to my shifts, and I was saving, and and I didn't know what to do. And a friend came to me and said, hey, I own a piece of a bunch of 7-Elevens, like 100. I was like, you own 100 7-Elevens? He's like, yeah, I get a check quarterly. I don't do anything with them. I was like, that can't be. That's like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme. Like,
Right.
that's not real.
Because we don't trust nobody.
No, I was like, that's not true. And he was like, yeah, it's called passive income. Like, what is that? What's passive income? He's like, this is what it is. So then, I talked to my husband, I'm like, maybe we should try it. Like, we don't have another option. So we were like, what do we have to lose? Like, if you're buying real estate, it's not like the value goes to zero. That doesn't happen. So we're like, okay, let's just put a small amount. So we put a small amount, and we put $25,000 into his next deal. And it was not a 7-Eleven. It was like an AutoZone that was a triple net lease. The one tenant signed a 20-year lease. And like 3 weeks later, we got 90% of our money back when they refinanced.
How quickly?
It was like 3 to 4 weeks. They just
Oh, wow.
closed. They did something. I don't know what they did. And then we got our money back, and we still own it, but they refinanced it. And and we were like, wow, okay, that's interesting. Let's take this money and do something with it again. So we put it into another deal, and then we started getting checks. We were like, okay, this is kind of nice. Like, how can we find more about this? And so we started doing it more and more and more. And that started in 2014. And during that time, I was like, I didn't know what asset classes were, so I started looking into real estate and listening to podcasts and reading books and really doing my own education. And I saw that there's so many different types of asset classes within real estate. There's so many ways to make money in real estate. You can do residential, you can do commercial. Within commercial, there's so many asset classes. You can do self-storage, you can do industrial, you can do mixed use buildings, you can do assisted living, you can do mobile homes, you can do multifamily. Even within multifamily, there's so many things. There's sober living and just high rises, low rises,
There's a lot of
garden
options. Yeah.
communities, so many options. And I did it all. I tried it all. I was like, okay, I mean, I'm just learning. So all I had to do was put my money with this and and I just learned through trial and error who I like to work with, what kind of returns each thing had, what were the positives, what were the negatives. And I really leaned towards the commercial because you can scale faster.
Yeah, that's what
When
I was
you're
going to ask you.
doing,
Like, I was going to ask you,
yeah,
like, you at one point, did you ever consider just doing like a single family home or maybe a multi-unit and then compare that
yeah,
to commercial properties and so forth?
yeah. So I started buying my own things. I have 3 duplexes and they cash flow great and it's amazing. But I was like, how do I 10X this? Because it's very difficult getting the loan, doing all the paperwork. They put you through the ringer to get a loan, um, versus a commercial property. So like the paperwork to refinance my $150,000 duplex was this thick. It took me 4 months. And for my $30 million property that I signed on the loan, it was like way thinner paperwork,
Hmm.
less signatures, and less scrutiny.
Hmm.
So I said, why would, so really 5 doors and higher is commercial loans.
So
So it's
this is
like, why?
all, so this is, you're doing all of this stuff while you are dealing with people who have heart attacks, central lines, you calling specialists, you doing 12-hour shifts, you still finding time to do and work on all this stuff when you're off from work.
Yeah, because, as an ER doctor, you work 14 days a month. So what do you do with the rest of the time? You sleep because you're always jet lagged, you're always tired. But during the rest of the time, I could do all of that stuff. I had the time to figure out what I wanted to do.
So
This
if
is
you're,
not a get rich quick scheme. This is a slow, methodical transition for me. I was
so you
very like scared.
Cause so just so everybody knows in context, you started 2014. You only officially kind of walked away from clinically practicing in 2020. So this has taken you a little bit over 6 years to get to
Yeah.
that point. So it's taken a while. So then once you had this auto zone and you're starting to realize, hey, let's 10x this, let's 100 times this. I've heard you say it, you've gone through all the different exponential. Like what year were you starting to realize, okay, we doing this, we making this happen? Like let's like you start to realize, how much longer in medicine do I have? Like what year are we talking on when you get to that point?
Well, once I decided, in 2020, I decided after being in the pandemic and after being told by administrators, you can have one mask a week. And here's a trash bag. Go into that COVID room and intubate that patient. When I was like, they don't care about my safety. They don't care. That was when I said, I don't care if I have enough money or not. I'm leaving. Um, Luckily at that time, I had enough passive income and enough like security that I could just hop into another career. And that's when I went into a completely different industry. I went into medical device.
Hmm.
And I said, I have these options. Before I didn't have them because it was going to be a pay cut. What am I going to do? I was the primary breadwinner. How are we going to pay the bills? My daughter wants to go to camp. My son has all these, he's a rock climber, he has all these camps that he does. And how am I going to not inconvenience my family? But once I was able to create that income with the multiple streams of income with different real estate syndications that I had, I was able to make that leap really smoothly.
I think one of the things that I think if you're in the medical field, like you are so focused on understanding the human body. I think I can't blame a lot of people, including myself. I'll be one of the first people to say, where you feel like, okay, I can only do this. This is what I'm really good at. But the skills that we have, the ability to dedicate, and concentrate on one thing, or the ability to understand a very complex situations. We've had people who've kind of switched to pharma or switched to other fields, and these other fields actually prefer people like us, you know, people who can handle these type of situations. But the thing that I really liked about what you just said was like you'll figure it out. Like you're smart enough. You're going to figure it out. Like after a while, there has to be a point where you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm not saying that that has to apply to everybody. I think, medicine, there's space for everybody in medicine to do anything that you want to do. I think that there are people who want to just do full time and they just want to work, until they're 60, 65. There's room for people like that. But I also think there's room for people like you. There's room for people like me. There's room for everybody. It's just that, like you said, you have to be really intentional and just say, hey, this is my exit ramp. I'm out and this is what I want to do. And that's what you did during the pandemic. And I appreciate you sharing that. The question I have for you then is let's do a little bit of some education because you mentioned syndications and so forth. Like, talk to us, like, what is a syndication? How do people get involved in that?
The biggest top level thing that I can say a syndication is basically a purchasing group.
You said a purchasing what?
Group.
Purchasing
you
group.
purchase
Got you.
things. You're coming together, you're pooling all your money, and you're buying large things. That's a syndication. It's a purchasing group. You're purchasing a retail center. You're purchasing a parking lot. You're purchasing land, and actually you can do syndications to buy a hospital, to buy an MRI center, an endoscopy center, a surgical center, whatever it is. You just create a group and you guys go together and buy something. Now,
see, I think a lot of people oftentimes think that like these are like owned by one person, or like these huge complexes are owned by one person. So that's false, right? Like it's
false.
It's a large group of investors who get together. Got you.
Right. And the purchasing group has people that have roles. So there's the people that are finding the deals, and they're the ones that are like underwriting it and getting the loan and doing the financial plan and managing the asset and managing the investors and finding the money, finding the rest of the purchasing group, and then answering questions and doing all the financial reviews and the legal aspect of it. And then in the end, they sell. Okay. Those are the active investors. Those are the general partners. Those are the
and when you say sell,
team.
what does that mean, sell?
So usually the ultimate goal, there's multiple goals, right? So you could do a legacy asset where you hold it forever. You sign that AutoZone for 20 years and you just hold it. When you're doing with syndications, typically there's just so many people that people don't want to lock up their assets that long. So it's usually a 3 to 5 year hold. And you typically want to buy it at one price and sell it at a higher price. Right?
And then do you get any residual amounts from that at all? Or no, you just get your money back that you put in?
So during that time, you're actually getting the rent. You're getting a piece of the rent. Like, so there's operating expenses and there's income. Like the people are paying you rent. So we'll take an example of a 200 unit apartment complex. So you have 200 families paying rent. It's its own business, right? And then there's expenses, there's maintenance men, and then there's the leasing agents, there's the property management, there's, the pool needs to be repaired, there's utilities. So it's its own little business that you're purchasing, but you're also purchasing the land. And every one of those partners gets a piece of the cash flow throughout the life of the asset. So when I say the life of the asset is typically 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it can be held 7 years. And there's different plans. It might be kind of like a fancy flip. So you buy it, you renovate some of the units, and then you sell it. You raise the rents, you raise the net operating income, and then you get a higher sales price than what you bought it, and then everybody splits the rewards.
I get it.
It also could be you buy it, you renovate it, you get a higher valuation, and then you refinance it. And then when you refinance it, you distribute that money back to all of the investors, but you keep holding it. And then the renters keep paying rent. So they keep paying, and whatever's left over is distributed among the partners. But at the end, it's sold. So that could be... No, that could be a 3 to 5. That could be a 5 year time. It could be a 7 year time. It could be a 2 year time period. But everyone at the end splits the sale price, whatever percentage you bought into that deal. And you also participate in all of the distributions as well.
So, as a physician or as a professional or anybody who's deciding to invest into a syndication, right? What would be their roles in that situation then?
And so it depends on what they want, right?
Mhm.
If you're a busy trauma surgeon, has a podcast, you're probably doing a ton of stuff, plus you want travel, and you don't want to be dealing with tenants, writing
Mhm.
reviews. You don't want to be dealing with contractors that don't show up. You are a limited partner. You put your money and then you get money. It's an
Mm.
investment. But there's plenty of doctors like me that say, no, I want to do the other stuff. I think it's
Okay,
fun.
so there's room, so there's like when you there's an opportunity to invest in like the high level decisions, the day by day decisions, operations, and so forth. You can just be like, there's a space there. I don't want to deal
Yeah,
with that. You just make the decision when they make a certain decisions and you're trusting with them. You get certain disbursements and go from there. Or there's the next step, which is where you're at. You're making the higher level decisions now.
right,
You're the
right. So
captain now.
it's a captain of the ship, right?
Yeah.
The ship is going towards a destination of money. You can
Okay.
hop
All
on
right.
as a you can hop on as a passenger and you get the rewards. I lead it, right? I'm going to decide when we sell, what we do to the property. I'm going to be making all the decisions. And then we all split it. Or you can decide to run your own project.
Mhm.
Um,
So because I
yeah,
go to different Facebook forums or the big thing now is side hustles for physicians,
right.
for professionals. And, you have bigger pockets, which is, at certain points, there's one spectrum where they're talking about single family homes, 10xing all of that, going into duplexes and so forth. And on the other end, there also have people who are at your level where they are at syndication levels or even, I don't even know if there's more than that, but you get what I'm saying, right? The question I have is, with all of these different advertisements for syndications and like, how do you vet a syndication? How do you know that whoever is contacting you is legit? Because we said it before, like, we've learned now, I think it's 2021, 2022 now, like, we know, like, hey, we work hard for our money. We want to keep our money. So how do you properly know, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, or this organization knows what they're talking about. I want to invest with them.
That's a great question. It's hard to know, right, who to trust. And there's a lot of people that, the economies was great over the last 10 years, specifically commercial real estate. Like we had a lot of tailwinds, like just,
Yeah.
you could be a terrible operator and you made a ton of money. But now things are getting a little bit more tricky and there's a little bit more volatility with interest rates, with the lending environment, with inflation and with the economy. And I could just go on and on. You want to be able to make sure that you trust your team. So it is very important to vet your sponsor. How do you vet them? You have to have a relationship with them. How do you have a relationship with them? You start with a conversation. Talk to them, get to know them, see if you connect, see if you trust them. It's an interview, right? Like you want to talk to
Dr.
them and
Ronnie,
get
though,
to know them.
I've, but Dr. Ronnie, just to be plain as Jake, this is Doc Side, we get real.
Mhm.
Like, I've talked to some of these folks and like they're talking over my head a lot of times. Like, they're using a lot of, like, I can understand net operating income. I can understand some of these, but there's certain things that are just like, okay, like I can see it being intimidating for,
Exactly.
an ER
And
doc
that's
or a trauma
eh,
doc or whoever it is. How do they
absolutely.
get past that point?
And that's why I'm here
Hmm.
where I am, because I talk to doctors. Like, did you feel like I talked over your head, or did you feel
Mm-mm.
like you
Not at
understood what I
all.
was saying?
Not
I
at all.
learned for 16 years how to talk to patients and explain to them what pulmonary edema or septic shock or a stroke was. I learned to talk in their language. And that's where I said, as an active sponsor, I want to be there to translate for someone to trust me. I'm also a physician. I also put money in the deal, in every single deal. So you're investing alongside me. If someone is so dedicated to helping patients and helping families, then I feel like the likelihood that they're going to screw someone over is lower. Now, there are, unethical doctors out there, that for sure, right? There's always people out there. But
But the vetting process for doctors compared to like any other thing, like, I was talking to my wife. I was like, it's amazing in real estate. If you compare real estate to medicine, like you are right. Like there are some unscrupulous docs out there, but it is so hard to get into med school. It's so hard to pass the test. It's so hard. Like you have to go through all of these different things to say, hey, you like something's wrong with him or her. Get her out of here, right? Whereas in other fields, anybody can get in, right? And I agree with you. I think that what you're saying, that puts you at a distinct advantage because you speak the talk that doctors speak. But for example, like I got, the show got some syndication asked us if they wanted to sponsor the show. So I had an interview with them. And this is one of those moments where I feel like they're just talking over my head. It was real salesman-like, and it just gave me the vibes of how I had vibes with financial advisors who were trying to sell me like whole life insurance almost, right? And I'm not saying that that's representative of the syndication industry, but it's just like, even I at the point was like,
well, this is where
do I expose my listeners to this?
But this is exactly where you bring value, right? Because you are a doctor and we are used to patients lying to us 24/7. Do you do drugs? No. Are you drunk? No. Why did you crash? Oh, your alcohol level is 500. That's why you crashed your car. Why did you jump off that roof? No, I was working on the roof. Really? At 2 a.m? Why did you jump off that roof? And, they have methamphetamines and cocaine. They have all the drugs. I mean, people lied to me all day long for 16 years. And I learned, and I think that that's what sets us apart, is that we have a BS meter. And part of you interviewing is if you don't have a good vibe, you don't invest with them. Right? That's the first step, right? But people want to invest with people that they know, like, and trust. So you got to get to know them. Have multiple conversations. Maybe one conversation is not enough. Maybe know them by listening to what they write, listening to their podcasts, listening to their blogs, going on their website, seeing what education they offer. Number one. Number two, again, establish that relationship. And then use your gut. Do you like them? Do you trust them? If all of those things don't work, that's a cut, right? And then you start asking, what's your investment criteria? What are you guys looking for? You might say, you might talk to someone that can be like, oh yeah, we're looking in, smaller markets that people might be moving to. And then you could say, that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because a lot of it, you want to see what they're looking for. Is it, how do you choose your market? How do you choose your city? Personally, we look for growing markets. We look for employers moving, for people moving, job growth, population growth, multiple economic drivers. I mean, you don't want a city where there's just one factory and something happens and everybody's fired and then they have to move away. You want multiple things. And if the market is good, and then you listen to what they're saying, you listen to what the words what's their plan? What are they going to do to this to make it go up in value? Or if they're going to be doing nothing to it, they're just waiting, then that means that's a longer process for you. So how long do you want your money locked up? Okay. You might say, well, no, they're going to exit in 3 to 5 years, and they're going to be renovating the kitchens, and they're charging more rents, and they're going to be putting a laundry units in the unit itself. And, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're going to be able to drive those rents up and sell faster. Okay. You want to ask them in the interview, what kind of mitigation for risk do you do? Do you have flood insurance? Do you have
now
property
we get into the
insurance?
meat of this. Come on, Dr. Ronnie, give us more. Give us more. We like this. Come on.
I have a property that we have multiple insurance. I have flood insurance. I have damage to the property insurance, and I have business interruption insurance. So if the apartment complex burns down, the whole thing burns down to the ground, I have insurance not only on the building, but I have insurance on the business that I would have lost from the people that were living there. And I'll tell you, most of the time, if something burns down, we come out ahead. Because, when you have people, they move in, they move out, there's fluctuations. But during that snapshot where we got whatever would happen, we have the financials to back it up, and the insurance they pay for it. So you have to plan. What kind of planning did they do? These are the questions that you want to ask, right? How did they choose? How much money are they putting in the deal? Every single deal I put in over $100,000 of my own.
So
money.
it is an expectation that whoever's driving the deal should be should be investing in this deal also, correct? So they have skin in the game. Got you.
But
okay.
In addition to skin in the game, I have my time in the game. Mm-hmm. Before I even present a deal to my investors, I've worked on it for 3 months. So I have 3 months of going back and forth with negotiating and getting the inspections and doing the due diligence and getting the lending and doing the marketing for it. And I've worked at least 3 months on a project before it even shows up on your door. So you have, in addition to skin in the game, I have time. My time is in the game.
Well, let me ask you this question then. For the folks that are listening now and they're just like, okay, well, it's great for her, but, what about me? So let's say, for example, you have someone who's right out of residency. They got like $250,000 to $300,000 of student loan debt. They are, they're doing okay from a salary standpoint, but they want to start building something on the side. They're not sure exactly when they're going to exit from medicine. Maybe they're not going to want to. Which asset class? How about that? Which asset class would you recommend for that person? Would you recommend like a syndication, or would you recommend maybe getting into single family home, maybe not commercial, like residential real estate? What would you recommend for someone who's in that situation?
I'll tell you, there's just so many options. Like, I just feel very strongly that no matter what you do in real estate, you're going to make money.
Okay. All right. Talk to me.
For a syndication, you need $50,000.
Okay, so that's for any syndication. That's minimum.
Yeah. Minimum.
Okay. It sounded like you were in a syndication at first, like with that AutoZone. That wasn't a syndication?
Yeah, that was a syndication.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, they made an exception. I put 25,000 in. Mm-hmm. People can do exceptions because I was scared, but they can do. But typically, it's between $50,000 and $100,000 that you're putting in to a deal. Okay. But you're 2xing it within 5 years. Got you.
So you have to be able to. So the folks listening, you got to be able to have that cash. But you also, I think I heard you on another podcast saying that you can use your 401k, the money in your 401k. But the folks who are in that position, who are just coming out, they ain't gonna have the money. They don't get a 401k. Gotcha.
For those people, I would recommend, house hacking. So
tell us about that.
So a lot of times you can buy a house, live in, I would buy a dupe personally. Like, let's say the problem is you come out of residency and you're like, woohoo, I want a Lamborghini. I have 20 years I work. But
Tesla.
If you can buy a duplex, get a 3% FHA loan. So it's only 3% down. You live on one side and you rent out the other. Okay. That's it. That second person is paying your mortgage. So you're basically living rent-free. Okay. After a year,
pretty damn near close to it.
After a year, you can move out. After a year. So you have to live there for a year next to your tenant, which kind of sucks, right? Unless you do really good, you put in a really good family in there, right? And you have a good relationship with them. So after a year, you move out and you buy another property and you do the same thing. You might not be able to do another FHA loan, but you might be able to get another loan. So, and then you move out again. So after 2 years, you already have 2 duplexes. And you can do that with a triplex if you want. You can do it. You can also buy a big house and rent out the bedrooms. That's called house hacking. Mm-hmm. Charge people rent, but then you have to live with a bunch of people. It'd be like a frat house. It depends if you're married or if you're not. Some people are willing to do that. But there's a lot of options.
Okay. So let's say, you're saying basically if you're fresh out of residency and you got a ton of student loan debt, probably the best thing is maybe house hacking, stay in the residential field a little bit, and then kind of work your way up from there. All right, what about the doctor who's mid-career? Someone like you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they've decreased their loan burden, maybe not completely out, but maybe they're 10 years in, whatever. Thoughts there? Same thing, residential or consider syndication? They may have a little bit more cash on them.
Yeah, I would say syndication.
Really? Okay.
That's when you don't have time. You still want to, unless you want to people are all into their side hustle. The side hustles, this takes time and it takes energy. It's not really passive for me, which I'm fine with, but it can be passive for
I'm
you.
glad you clarified it
right?
because a lot of people sometimes will be like, yeah,
Yeah.
boom, 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 I'm doing passive income. I make money while I sleep. And it's
No.
like, no, you're not. You did all this sweat equity before. Come on, yo. Tell us
Right.
the truth. I'm glad you're saying that. Okay, good.
Yeah. But it could be passive for the investors, right?
Mhm.
You're mid-career, you're presenting at conferences, you're doing papers, you're whatever it is. You're busy. But you don't want your money sitting in your bank account. It is draining. The savings account is your silent killer. The inflation now is insane. It's the highest in 40 years. You don't want it sitting there. You also don't want it in crypto. I have friends that it just tanked. You don't want it in the stock market. Everything's tanked. So where do you put your money? Where is it safe? It's not safe anywhere. Well, it's safe in hard assets that are cash flowing. You can do it. How do you buy a cash flowing asset? You can do it yourself, or you could say, I trust this person, let them do it for me. They're already doing it. And, I want to split the difference. I want to make money just like they're making money. So that's where you can tap into your retirement accounts. You can invest with cash. You can create entities. You can do a trust. There's so many ways that you can invest. You can even invest with your whole life policy. I just did that.
Okay.
I just did an investment. I have a whole life policy that I had $50,000 of cash value in it. I pulled it out as a loan for me and I put it in an investment. I'm paying 4% a year on that, but I'm making 20% average annual return by the end of 5 years. So in the end, it's still like money, right? I'm still making money. I'm using as much as I can and taking a little bit more risk than I was used to 15 years ago.
Well, let's take a step back then. Okay. So, I appreciate you educating us on how, syndications work and the difference between residential and commercial. That's really great. This is good. So let's go back to like 2020 when obviously, the most stress that I think the medical community has faced in, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years or something like that. I don't know. It's the Spanish flu. I don't know. It's been a long time and stuff. When you finally decided to walk away, like, where were you at mentally? Did you have any guilt? Did you have any regret? Even to this point, do you ever say, I just want to go back? Do you have a license? Like, did you get rid of all of that talk? Where are you at right now?
I have my medical license. I have my DEA. So I still write prescriptions for my family. I have no regret. I gave 16 years of my life with limited resources, with many times with patients yelling at me, with family members yelling at me, with nurses yelling at me, just terrible situations where I kept my cool, where I've helped so many lives. I don't have one day of regret for what I did for 16 years, but I'm done. Now I want to help people in other ways. I don't need to help them with their health. I want to help them with their finances. So I'm still finding meaning in what I'm doing. And that's something that I didn't know was possible in the past. I didn't know that you could still do things like help people without being a doctor. I'm just doing it in a different way.
Right.
And I'm very happy with my choices. And truthfully, I could always go back if I wanted to.
So I know that I heard you on another podcast. You were talking about how, some of your colleagues back in 2014, or I guess, a couple of years after that, were kind of looking at you like, what is this side stuff that you're doing? Like, I guess you even asked them, hey, come and join me on X, Y, and Z project. And then I guess when, you're getting close to the point where you're like, I'm done with this, a lot of them were like, well, where are you going? Like, what's all this? Talk to us about that. What was that conversation like?
Oh yeah, it was so great. Around 2020, I started giving away all my shifts. And they were like, did you win the lottery? And I said, sort of. I'm leaving medicine. Yeah, I'm so excited. And they were like, what did you do? Because we would sit around in between patients and talk about how we're going to buy a restaurant together, and, maybe a donut shop or, how easy would it be just to mop the floors and do the cash register. So much easier. And here I was leaving and I wasn't tied to my job anymore. And I said, hey, do you remember when I told you about all the real estate stuff that I was doing? Like, this is it. And even now, 2 years later, they're reaching out to me. They're saying, hey, now I want to talk. Like I'm at my breaking point. Now I want to talk. I want to talk to you. I want to learn about this. And they've come along for the ride with me. And
It's tough, man. Look, I gotta admit, it's tough to be the first person to do it. So I gotta give you props, right? Like when you are the only person or you feel like you're the only person who's doing it, it's really tough. And then also at the same time, when you see and you have all of these different responsibilities, and sometimes you're not ready to take that step until you see someone else who looks just like you, who works just like you, doing that, and that's what you're doing. And maybe your colleagues are like, well, if she can do it, why can't I? Help me, please, along the way. And that's the whole point of you coming on the show, is to let other people know that there's practicing medicine can look different for so many different people. In my opinion, I think one of the biggest things, the biggest failures, I think, in medical school is that we're not properly preparing our graduates, even from residency. We're not properly, getting them ready for what corporatized medicine looks like. Those are two separate things. Like how you train in residency and what you learn in medical school is, yes, you're going to be taking care of a patient. You're going to be taking care of a human being, but they don't prepare you for the U.S. healthcare conglomerate, which is completely different, which is, come on, fast, 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 at
right.
Oftentimes at your expense, right? Whatever that
and
may
then
be.
Here's a survey. Survey to the patients. Did the doctor, did you love your doctor when I have 5 minutes to see my septic shock patient, or simultaneously I'm taking care of multiple strokes and I have to decide who gets transferred, who doesn't get transferred, who goes to the cath lab. I mean, there was a day where I had 3 MIs at the same time. 3. How does that happen? It just did. And you have to decide, okay, well, the cath lab can only handle like one person at a time. Who goes when, and like, how do you handle that? And they don't teach you that.
No, they don't. And you have to triage and you have to ration sometimes. And you would think in the United States, you don't have to do that. But in many situations, you may have to ration that care just so that you can, spread yourself and make sure that everybody gets, some type of care. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is not for, the med students or the residents to feel negative and to have come back with or leave this episode with well, this, medicine is doomed or I'm doomed. No, that's not the case. I think we're showing Dr. Ronnie as she's one of the examples how you can show, if you're very intentional about where you want to go with your career, that, if you're not intentional, someone else is going to have a plan for you. So you might as well make your own plan and decide what you're going to do with your career. And I think that that's the whole concept of side hustles is that, look, I enjoy medicine, but I'm not sure if I necessarily want to give my entire life to it. There are other interests that I want to do. And some of these interests may turn out making some more money. And as we know, money's a tool. Money buys you time. Money buys you the ability to say no. And I think for you, in your case, it's very individualistic. You said no to this and you wanted to walk away. So I think that's dope. And I think that this is a really good point of having you on the show to discuss this.
Thank you. And, I want to say, imagine a time where you're walking into your shift or into the clinic and you have the choice whether you want to do it or not. Imagine a time when your spouse says, hey, you don't look so tired like you used to look. Imagine a time where you can travel when you want to travel. When if you want to work, you can work. You have the time freedom that you always thought you would as a physician. No one ever thinks in their head that they're going to be married to the hospital and on call and sleep deprived, and they won't say, see their kids and take vacations and be called in the middle of dinner back to the hospital. Like, no one thinks like that. But imagine a time when you have all that freedom. That's what real estate, and that's what it gives you options. It gives you freedom. It lets you decide how much space you need. Do you want to go in today? Do you want to do 15 shifts? Do you want to do 10 shifts? Do you want to work part-time? It gives you those options that a lot of people feel trapped. They feel trapped by their jobs. You get paid a lot. There's not a lot of options out there. A lot of doctors are even living paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, we were doing that. Yep. That was us at one point when we first got married. We were living paycheck to paycheck in a two-physician household.
Yeah. And people think, like, how can you possibly be two physicians living paycheck to paycheck? It's very common.
Yeah. Don't know how to manage their money.
This gives you freedom. And that's the only thing. Like, I didn't understand it until I had no choice but to learn it. And now I want to help other people, learn it, understand that they have options. They have the option for time freedom.
So listen, for the folks that are listening and they want to learn more with you or they want to work with you, how can they connect with you?
So go ahead and schedule a call with me. Schedule a call at, you can go to, you can email me at ronnie@shalwinproperties.com to schedule a call. You can also go directly to my Calendly link, which is calendly.com calendly.com/Shalwin Properties. That's my company. I'll be happy to hop on a call with you and really talk to you about your pains, your goals, and give, any kind of advice that I can.
Hey, Dr. Ronnie, thank you very much for sharing this. Once again, I think this was really, really interesting perspective from someone who, what you're saying, like total 15 years in with ER?
Mm-hmm. 16.
And then 16 and deciding to walk away and now deciding to teach and train other physicians and how they can really develop some options for themselves outside of clinical medicine. This was great. So guys, everything that she said in terms of the links, emails, all that stuff, that's going to be in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. Dr. Ronnie, this was great. Thank you so much for teaching our audience about how to get some options outside of clinical medicine. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.